because he was born with the intention of others that he should never be great. He was literally born with his name on a plowshare in a system of slavery that exists in the United States, still exists today, called sharecropping. In sharecropping, it is the intention of the people who own the land that the people there, the grandfather will be a sharecropper, your father will be a sharecropper, and you will be a sharecropper, and your children and grandchildren, and so on, will be sharecroppers. When it's presented to the potential sharecropper, it was presented at a time when our people really didn't have many choices. And it was presented in a way that sounded not too bad. The owner of the land would say that he was going to share some of the land with you. You would farm it, and then at the end, all the crops would be put together and sold, and then you would get your share. But when it came time to do the division of the wealth, you'd say, hey, you remember when your wife got pregnant and we called for that doctor? Well, that was this many dollars. And remember when your plow broke? That was this many dollars. And remember when you got sick? Well, that was this many dollars. Now let's calculate it up and see how much you get. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Would you believe you actually owe me $50? And we go on like that, so on and so forth. But Professor Clarke escaped that. He escaped that with the help of his community and the help of his family that saw he could do a lot more for our people if he would get an education and if he would move out of that area. He did. And he hooked up with a brother by the name of Arthur Schomburg. And Arthur Schomburg, Professor Clarke used to seem to enjoy letting you know. He was a person born in Puerto Rico, of African ancestry, with a German name. And Professor Clarke had read an essay by him, by Brother Schomburg, that had piqued his interest in African history, and he decided he had to make his way up here to this man for him to tell him about African history. Professor Clarke says that Brother Schomburg looked at him and smiled and said, son, African history, black history, is just the missing part of world history. The part that our oppressors erased, distorted, and hid. This is not Schomburg now, this is just me going into it a little bit. The part that they distorted and hid. And he set him on a quest to go and learn world history, and in the course of that, you know, you'll be able to know black history. And Schomburg himself was a person who had been told by his teachers that he came from a people that had no history. And he went and he scoured the libraries and museums of the world and debunked that. He had so many books that this is a true fact. The New York City Library used to borrow books from him. Okay? This is real. And he was made the curator of a library on 135th Street there, which is now called the Schomburg Library. It's really the big building you see there, but on the side, the Schomburg used to be that little building on the side. I don't know how many people have been there to that, the small Schomburg, okay? So I'm preaching to the choir. I don't have to tell any of you this. Speaking of preaching to the choir, let me stop with what I was saying and begin our program with a short libation. You know, libation nowadays means people say they haven't doing libation when they take a drink. Okay, it certainly has something to do with water, and this, or liquid, I should say. And this is a ceremony that originated in Africa It goes all the way back as far as you can go in the history of our people, and it is contained in all of the major Western religions. Still has some sort of water ceremony, whether it be christening or baptism, whether it be dipping your hand in the holy water or whatever. But it's meant to be a tribute to those who have gone on beyond and are now in the earth, okay? And it's meant to be a tribute to those who are yet unborn. And so I'm going to say a very short libation. Mother of our mothers, father of our fathers, we call upon the spirit of the ancestors far and near to give us the victory. Ashe. Professor John Henry Clarke. Ashe. Martin Delaney. Ashe. Patrice Lumumba. Ashe. You can call out some names.
Dr. Benny
Ashe.
George Stinney.
Ashe.
Amos Wilson.
Ashe. They can be family members. Ashe. Ashe.
Dr. Ben.
Ashe.
Nat Turner.
Ashe.
Harriet Ross Tubman.
Ashe.
Emmett Till.
Ashe.
Philip Glover.
Ashe.
Amadou Diallo.
Ashe.
Sean Bell.
Ashe.
Stokely Carmichael.
Ashe.
Trayvon Martin.
Ashe.
Eric Garner.
Ashe.
Huey P. Newton.
Ashe.
Derek Gray.
Ashe.
Fred Hampton.
Ashe.
George Jackson.
Ashe.
Jonathan Jackson.
Ashe. And what we'll do now is we'll say for all of those ancestors and all the ancestors whose names were hidden from us, they are in the bottom of the ocean, from the Middle Passage and other places. Ashe. And for the unborn.
Ashe.
All right. Thank you, brothers and sisters. You know, this ritual, as I said before, even our young people, you'll see them participate in it. They'll have some wine, right? They'll be drinking on the corner, and they pour a little bit down on the ground. What do they say?
Two brothers not here.
For the brothers that's upstate. That's right. To the brothers not here and the brothers upstate, making tribute to that living death that so many of our brothers and now sisters too are in. We're very privileged today, and in one way maybe cheated a little bit. We have a great lecturer, author, activist, scholar that we've seen in the Harlem community for a long time, Professor Yaa Lengi Ngemi. And the last time I saw him, he had some slides that you really should see. But I can't say that I'm disappointed that you cannot see. Because those slides represented something that I'm sure he will tell you about, that both you should see, but you won't like them when you see them. All right? And this brother has stayed on issue. If we had 100 brothers like him, this would be over. And I think he represents the spirit of that brother that we're talking about today, who is our beloved ancestor and martyr, Brother Patrice Lumumba. So please give him a Baper John Henry Clarke House welcome, Professor Yaa Lengi Ngemi. One more word I want to say. Please do not interrupt Professor Ngemi during his talk. There will be a question and answer period, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Dr. McIntosh, and welcome, brothers and sisters. Hotep, Barigani, that's Kiswahili, Jema. I am humbled to be here. I'm humbled because Dr. Clarke was, as we say, we black people, we say, was my father. I was just introducing Dr. McIntosh to my mom sitting here, the young lady here, Sister Lori. That's because that's how we are. Anybody of my father's age is my father. Anybody of my mom's age is my mom. I was in the South a couple of years back. I went to give a lecture in Columbus where Dr. Clarke is resting. His bones are resting. So we went by his cemetery to pay tribute to him, to talk to him, because we believe that the dead are not dead. That's why our ancestors are with us. That's why we call them when we pour libation. But I'm humble because this is my pop's house. This is Dr. Clarke's house. So that's why I'm here. And I'm humble because I'm speaking in front of people of my brother's age, my mom's age, my dad's age. And so I just came to share with you. I wish Dr. Jeffries, my big brother, was here so I could have gotten on his case, talk to him a little bit. Because if I'm standing here, first is because of our ancestor now, Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben. Because as a young scholar, when I finished my studies in the South, in Louisiana, I came to New York. He was the first one that I saw. I was reading the Amsterdam News, and I saw in there that Dr. Clarke is speaking in Queens at the African Poetry Theater. So, so I went to see him there. After he spoke, we met. I talked to him. I introduced myself. So he told me, "Oh, you from the Congo?" I said, "Yeah." "You speak French?" I said, "Yeah." "Do you translate?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do. I was translating for my university in Louisiana." I said, "Okay, come see me to my office." So he invited me to his office on 125th when he had an office there with Professor Simmons. And the two of them had an office there, so I went and met them.
Dr. Ben or Professor Clarke?
Dr. Ben.
Okay, you said Professor Clarke a little while earlier.
Yeah, Dr. Ben invited me. He spoke at the African Poetry Theater. Thank you. So I went to see them on 125th. He said, "Okay, listen, there's a book here they've been trying to find a translator, and they haven't been able to get it translated." So he spoke about it. I said, "Oh, I've read the book in French, Civilization or Barbarism." So he said, "Oh, you read it? Okay." They gave me a note with the address. "Go see Dr. Jeffries at City College." So I left 125th Street, came to City College. We met with Dr. Jeffries, we introduced. He spoke French. He's been to Ivory Coast and all of that. So I told him Dr. Ben sent me here. So that's how I integrated the African community here. And through working at City College, translating the book, Sister Lori here was the first one to start typing what I was translating. At that time when the computers were being invented, right? They had those big discs, like this book. You had to, but that's how I joined the community. So that's why I wish Dr. Jeffries was here. I would have paid tribute to him while he is here for bringing me into the community. For me translating Cheikh Anta Diop's book, Civilization or Barbarism. And for me, therefore, being able to go and sit at the feet of Dr. Clarke, of Dr. Ben, and learning from them, and being able to grow my knowledge of our own people. And I was going to tell Dr. Jeffries that the ancestors are not going to give him permission to die now. He has to carry the torch of our knowledge. And as we fight for the Congo to be liberated, he has to wait until we free the Congo so Dr. Jeffries can come to the Congo and teach this African knowledge. Because, brothers and sisters, Africa is dying. Our people in Africa are dead spiritually and culturally. I'm going to get to that. This is just a little preliminaries I want to take care of before I get in the subject. But that's what I wanted to tell Dr. Jeffries. That he cannot die. He has to wait. Now, Dr. Clarke is gone. Dr. Ben is gone. Alvan Vaselima is gone. Who do we have left? Dr. Jeffries. And I was going to talk to him a little bit about Black Studies Department because that was the time when African people in America was going to rediscover themselves. It was cooking. City College Black Studies Department was like, when all of us met there, when the lecture was going to take place, man, it was like there's a resurrection going on. White folks conspired to cut it down, to cut it off. Now, Dr. Jeffries is retired. Hopefully, he can, when we liberate the Congo, he can come now and we'll give him a department over there so he can open the minds of the brothers there. So, I wanted to pay tribute to these people, these ancestors, and this one left now, before we can talk about Patrice Lumumba. My brother, Dr. McIntosh, when he wrote to me, said that we're going to talk about what today's black leaders can learn from the leadership of Patrice Lumumba. So I'm sure when he says black leaders, him being world known, he's talking about black leaders all over the world. Absolutely. He's not just talking about black leaders in Africa or here, but black leaders all over the world. What can they learn today? I'm glad my brother Winston is tight there taping it, so hopefully he can share the tapes with some of these black leaders, because we have so much to learn from Patrice Lumumba. I know most of you know or were there when the African people here protested when Lumumba was assassinated. I was a young person in the Congo, but most of you are of Malcolm X ages, so you could have been there when Lumumba was killed. Patrice Lumumba was born from the Congo. I know everybody here knows, so Doc here doesn't have to show you the map. The Congo, which is in the heart of Africa, and born in 1925. He was about 29 years old when he was fighting for the independence of the Congo. The Belgian Congo was a colony that the history, I cannot go into the details right now because I really want to concentrate on what is going on here. And please, if you have a piece of paper, when a question comes, write it down, because we can stay and talk. We are in our house, so we can talk as long as we can. Because I tell you some questions that may come to you, you're going to forget them. Because I'm going to be talking about things that some of them you may agree, some of them you may not agree with. But stay with me, write down, because we have to confront everything. We have to confront everything today. Because the liberation of our people has has not happened for too long. And those who fought for it, those who died for it, those who came after them to try to get us to believe in it, they are all gone. They are all going. They are all going. Today in Africa, I can state that there is no Pan-Africanist left in Africa. There's no leader who is a Pan-Africanist left in Africa. We're going to talk about that. I would like you to challenge me to ask questions after I finish. So that's why it's so important. And I want to thank Brother Dr. McIntosh for this subject, because it's a crucial subject today. Let's just talk a little bit about Patrice Lumumba. So he was a young man, 29 years old, when he started fighting for the independence of the Congo. So when they started talking, the Belgians arrested him, put him in prison before even Congo became independent, because they viewed him as a nationalist, because he was adamant about the total independence of the Congolese people. Total independence of the Congolese people. And so they put him in jail. As Congolese people were fighting, they started marching in 1959. There was people rose up in Kinshasa. There was troubles. Finally, the Belgians said, okay, let's talk about this. Come to Belgium so we can talk about it. So they took everybody else who was like a leader to Belgium for them to have what they call the round table while Lumumba was in jail. They kept him in prison in the Congo. But thank God those that were taken to Belgium, knowing what Lumumba meant, they told the Belgians, we are not sitting down and talking with you until Lumumba gets here. So the Belgians had to send word to the Congo for them to put Lumumba, take him out of prison, put him in a plane, and take him to Brussels for the round table. They got over there talking, they negotiated, okay, fine. Gonna give us independence. Some people said, okay, we gotta wait. Lumumba said, no, we have to be independent now. So they decided June 30th, 1960 will be the Independence Day. So now, everybody agreed. So we're gonna have elections. They had elections in 59. Lumumba's a party was MNC, Mouvement National Congolais. He was talking about nationalism, a movement for all the Congolese. And because the people heard him talk, that we are all one people, that's the first time the Congolese people went to vote. And they voted in majority for Patrice Lumumba's party. So they agreed to have a system where the prime minister is the head of the government, like they have in England. So the president is really symbolic. So Lumumba was supposed to form the government. So he formed the government. Now, Lumumba, in trying to have the unity, the Congo is as huge as all of Western Europe together. That's how big the Congo is. The Congo is big as the United States east of the Mississippi River, all of the United States from north to south. That's how big the Congo is. There's about over 450 different languages spoken there.
Wow.
But Lumumba was able to galvanize all these people. They came together as one. So they gave him the majority, he formed the government, and now, but for him, because he came from the southeast of the Congo, he said, all right, let us nominate for president somebody from the west of the Congo, from the Bakongo of the Congo kingdom that you all know with the Queen Nzinga and all of that. So Kasavubu then was picked up to be president. So we can have a balance. We can have unity. On Independence Day, June 30th, 1960, the King of Belgium came to the Kinshasa, to Leopoldville at the time, and to, in essence, hand over, tell the Congolese, you are independent now. So when this man came, he gave a speech that in essence was treating the Congolese as subhumans. He said the civilizing work that King Leopold II did to bring you civilization, you cannot mess up with it. Because he came and civilized you, gave you civilization. Now we are giving you the independence. We hope you're not going to mess it up. So Lumumba, as he was sitting down, you know, he couldn't believe that this man was giving this kind of speech in our country when he knows that we know what went on. So Lumumba had prepared a little speech, so he started changing it, fixing it up. Kasavubu gave a speech. We thank you for giving us the independence. We thank you. We're going to try to show you that we deserve to be independent and all of that. So when he finished, Patrice Lumumba got up. So nobody was expecting him to speak. He got up and he said, he went there and he gave his little speech. It's not long. And I said, I'll copy it so I can read it to you because it's very short. And he gave it in French. A lot of people have translated it in English. So this is Patrice Lumumba's little speech, short one, on Independence Day. Yes. When this white so-called king of Belgium came there to try to show the people that King Leopold II, who killed over 15 million Congolese, that he came to civilize us. So Patrice Lumumba wrote a speech and he said, Congolese men and women, victorious independence fighters, I salute you in the name of the Congolese government. I ask all of you, my friends, who tirelessly fought in our ranks to mark this June 30th, 1960 as an illustrious date that will be ever engraved in your hearts. A date whose meaning you will proudly explain to your children, so that they in turn might relate to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the glorious history of our struggle for freedom. Although this independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms, no Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle, a persevering and inspired struggle carried on from day to day, a struggle in which we were undaunted by privation or suffering and stinted neither strength nor blood. It was filled with tears, fire and blood. We are deeply proud of our struggle because it was just and noble and indispensable in putting an end to the humiliating bondage forced upon us. That was our lot for the 80 years of colonial rule, and our wounds are too fresh and much too painful to be forgotten. We have experienced forced labor in exchange for pay that did not allow us to satisfy our hunger, to clothe ourselves, to have decent lodgings, or to bring up our children as dearly loved ones. Morning, noon, and night, we were subjected to jeers, insults, and blows, the atrocious sufferings, being persecuted for political convictions and religious beliefs, and exiled from our native land. Our lot was worse than death itself. We have not forgotten that in the cities the mansions were for the whites and the tumble-down huts for the blacks. That the black was not admitted to the cinemas, restaurants, and shops set aside for Europeans. That the black traveled in a hold under the feet of the whites in their luxury cabins. Who will ever forget that shootings which killed so many of our brothers, or the cells into which were mercilessly throw on those who no longer wish to submit to the regime of injustice, oppression, and exploitation used by the colonialists as a tool of their domination. All that, my brothers, brought us untold suffering. But we, who were elected by the votes of your representatives of the people, to guide our native land, we who have suffered in body and soul from the colonial oppression, we tell you that henceforth all that is finished with. The Republic of the Congo has been proclaimed, and our beloved country's future is now in the hands of its own people. Brothers, let us commence together a new struggle, a sublime struggle that will lead our country to peace, prosperity, and greatness. Together, we shall establish social justice and ensure for every man a fair remuneration for his labor. We shall show the world what the black man can do when working in liberty, and we shall make the Congo the pride of Africa. We shall see to it that the lands of our native country truly benefit its children. We shall revise all the old laws and make them into new ones that will be just and noble. We shall stop the persecution of free thought. We shall see to it that all citizens enjoy the fullest extent the basic freedoms provided for by the Declaration of Human Rights. We shall eradicate all discrimination, whatever its origin, and we shall ensure for everyone a station in life befitting his human dignity and worthy of his labor and his loyalty to the country. We shall institute in the country a peace resting not on guns and bayonets, but on concord and goodwill. And in all this, my dear compatriots, we can rely not only on our own enormous forces and immense wealth, but also on the assistance of the numerous foreign states whose cooperation we shall accept when it is not aimed at imposing upon us an alien policy, but is given in a spirit of friendship. Even Belgium, which has finally learned the lesson of history and need no longer try to oppose our independence, is prepared to give us its aid and friendship. For that end, an agreement has just been signed between our two equal and independent countries. I am sure that this cooperation will benefit both countries. For our part, we shall, while remaining vigilant, try to observe the engagements we have freely made. Thus, both in the internal and external spheres, the new Congo being created by my government will be rich, free, and prosperous. But to attain our goal without delay, I ask all of you legislators and citizens of the Congo to give us all the help you can. I ask you all to sink your tribal quarrels. They weaken us and may cause us to be despised abroad. I ask you all not to shrink from any sacrifice for the sake of ensuring the success of our grand undertaking. Finally, I ask you unconditionally to respect the life and property of fellow citizens and foreigners we have settled in our country. If the conduct of these foreigners leaves much to be desired, our justice will promptly expel them from the territory of the Republic. If, on the contrary, their conduct is good, they must be left in peace, for they too are working for our country's prosperity. The Congo's independence is a decisive step towards the liberation of the whole African continent. Our government, a government of national and popular unity, will serve its country. I call on all Congolese citizens, men, women, and children, to set themselves resolutely to the task of creating a national economy and ensuring our economic independence. Eternal glory to the fighters for national liberation. Long live independence and African unity. Long live the independent and sovereign Congo. So that is the speech that Lumumba gave. But when he gave that, the King of Belgium and everybody was there got very upset. Why this man gave that speech to claim equality with the whites, to claim independence, to claim that, you know, they're not, Congolese are no longer going to tolerate domination. And after that, or at that time, there was a decision made for Lumumba to die. Not only from Belgium, but also from the United States. So, it didn't take long before he was arrested. When the CIA, which was the most powerful force in the Congo, Belgium is just a small country, so they didn't have all the things that the power and the reach that the United States had. So the CIA in Kinshasa first they wanted to poison him, they couldn't reach him, so they went to see Mobutu, a young man who had been Lumumba's secretary, and who he set up to try to oversee the military. They went to him and gave him money. Said, look, you got to arrest that Patrice Lumumba. He accepted. Took the money, arrested Lumumba, and after a little while, they decided, because they wanted him killed, so they sent him to Katanga, to the east part, southeast part of the Congo, Katanga, where Moise Chombe, who had been used by the Belgians for him to declare his province as a separate country so they can take the minerals that are there. And because of that, he was an enemy to Patrice Lumumba, who was fighting for national unity and Pan-Africanism. Finally, they sent Lumumba there, and he was killed. And after he was killed, they decided that even his body should not be someplace. So they sent a few, I think 3 or 2 Belgians, who went and dug up the body, cut it up in pieces, put it in sulfuric acid, and crushed the bones in powder, and then went and just scattered them all over the place so nobody will see anything that is of Lumumba. A few years back, they had a hearing in Belgium where this guy who participated in that came forward and said, yeah, he did that. In fact, he showed 2 of Patrice Lumumba's teeth that he kept, and one of the bullets that was lodged in Lumumba's body. So that's how really the hope of the Congolese, and you can say of Africa, died with Patrice Lumumba. Now, what does it mean for black leaders today? First, what does it mean for us? In my research and meditating on this, I came to make a connection between Patrice Lumumba and Malcolm X. In fact, Malcolm X said that Patrice Lumumba was the greatest leader that ever lived in Africa, on the continent of Africa. Maybe for like 3 reasons. Number 1, for the love of his people. And you and I, we know Malcolm X loved his people. That's number 1. Number 2, for love of truth. Let me say that again. For love of truth. And this word truth, you can use it any which way you want, but I'm talking about pure truth. You know the story of Malcolm X. When things started happening between him and Muhammad, and the young lady who came to tell him these stories and all of that, you know what happened to Malcolm X? And he went to confront the leader, and told him, look, I'll accept if you tell me the truth. In fact, because the leader reasoned with him. That way it happened before, it happened in the Old Testament too. You know, it happened in a biblical story. So the leader can do that and, you know, they have children and, you know, it's all right. You can forgive and forget. So Malcolm X took that to say, okay, now I have to defend the man because he explained to me what was happening. But guess what? The enemies and those people who were on the side decided that Malcolm had to go. Why? Because he sought the truth. That's what happened to Patrice Lumumba. He spoke the truth. He could not hide in front of white folks what his people have gone through just because this white man is standing there and telling us, okay, be happy. Be happy that, you know, we're giving the independence. Be happy for my granddad, what he did. No matter whether he killed you or not, yeah, he brought you civilization. The third element, I'm comparing Malcolm X to Patrice Lumumba, is this. Patrice Lumumba realized that in order for us to build this country, we are going to need every effort. First, unity amongst us, and then contributions for everyone who has our best interest at heart. Because he said, if they mess up, we're gonna throw them out. But if they're gonna help us, we will work with them. Now, remember when Malcolm X came from when he went to Mecca, when he traveled, went to Africa, when he came back, what organization did he create? Anybody knows?
Organization of African Unity.
That's right. And what did Malcolm X say? He said, I have seen clear now. I am ready to work with anyone who's going to help me what? Free my people. Anyone, Malcolm X said, black, white, red, yellow, if you're going to work with me for the interest of my people, I'm going to work with you. So that's the stage where Malcolm X got, where Patrice Lumumba got. And why? Because all of us have to get there. If we want, I just told you that Congo is as big as all of Western Europe. I don't know if you know, Patrice Lumumba, when he came here, he spoke at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He told the brothers and the sisters from here, he said, look, you have developed America. Now come back home. Come and develop the land of your ancestors. You know why? Because wherever your people are, that's your land. That's your land. I have no problem with that. Brothers and sisters, I went to school at Louisiana State University in the Deep South when I came to America. At the white university where all the governors and the state senate and all of them finished there. Louisiana State University. But when I came, I loved Africa so much, I was braiding my hair and they were sticking out. My watch, I never had any of the band that is like this. I brought a big animal skin, so when I buy a watch, I'll cut the skin and make a band for my watch. I want everybody to see I'm an African. I had a wooden necklace I used to wear, and so they would see me, and my backpack was made out of raffia, of these vines from Africa. You know, they'd be hanging out like that. At this white university, but then because I was studying at that time, was studying agricultural science. Then we go to the plantations in the Deep South. When we go over there, and all the whites will go to the restaurant, I'll go to the kitchen to go see the black people cooking, and I said, "Oh, where you from?" I say, "Africa." "Oh, Britain." Oh, they will embrace me. They will hug me. We will hug each other. And I had a family over there in the South. African American family. I had one in Florida. So it seemed to me like there were more Africans than the African Americans and Africans from the continent I was meeting at LSU, Louisiana State University. Those in the country were more Africans. They'll embrace you, you dance, you go, you eat with them, you just like being back home. That's why I came to understand Malcolm X, I came to understand Patrice Lumumba, and when I came to New York, that's why I love being amongst my people. Dr. Jeffries, sometimes we'll argue over there and say, and then Dr. Ben, Dr. Clarke, I used to go in his house on 137th Street in the basement. I'll sit on the floor and then we'll be talking, he'll be teaching me about what he knew about Africa. Because we are one people. So when you look at Malcolm X and Patrice Lumumba, they are together. But what I have decided to do today to take you one step further. Because Malcolm X and Patrice Lumumba stopped at Pan-Africanism. But I want to take you to one step higher, which is what my brother Dr. McIntosh talked about when the Schomburg talked to Dr. Clarke when he was a young man. That the African history is the missing part of world history. We need to get there. Why? Because without getting there, we cannot be Pan-Africanists. Without getting there, we cannot be nationalists. Because if we don't get there, we'll be what I call isolationist. It will be as if Pan-African history is only the history of African people. White folks are not there. But actually, as Schomburg told Dr. Clarke and Dr. McIntosh, that's the Spirit told him to bring this up, he was saying that our history is the missing part of what? World history. So the black leaders of today they're not even at the Pan-Africanism right now in Africa. Like I told you, today in Africa there's not one Pan-Africanist. So let alone African unity and all talking about world history. Now, one person got there is Sheikh Anta Diop, who's also dead now. So we're going to come back to Patrice Lumumba, because I'm going to end up with the letter that he wrote to his wife when he was in prison, knowing that he was going to die. But in the book that I translated, Civilizational Barbarism, which is the magnum opus, or the what they call it, the book, the final book that this man wrote, his masterpiece, as Dr. Clarke calls it. In this book, Diop talks about the totality of our history. But in the introduction, this is what he says, talking about that dimension that Dr. McIntosh talked about, that our history is the missing part of the world history, right? In the introduction, this is what Diop wrote. Please here, follow with me. He said this: insofar as Egypt is the distant mother of Western cultures and sciences, you heard that, right? Insofar as Egypt is a distant mother of Western cultures and sciences, as it will emerge from the reading of this book, then he says, most of the ideas that we call foreign are oftentimes nothing but mixed up, reversed, modern ancestors. Listen, such as Judaism, Christianity, Islam, dialectics, the theory of being, the exact sciences, arithmetic, geometry, mechanical engineering, astronomy, medicine, literature, novel poetry and drama, architecture, the arts, etc., etc. That is what my brother said, the history of Africa being the missing part of world history. Because without us, the world does not exist. Because without our history, human history does not exist. Now, but where are we? As I said, what can we learn? What can we learn from the leadership of Lumumba, of Malcolm X, of these leaders who fought and died for our cause? But first we have to do a little analysis. My brother who's a medicine, he knows that before you can treat a disease, first you have to do what? To diagnose it, right? You have to find out what is ailing this person. Now, talking about that, Diop wrote something in that same, by the way, let me tell you this because this was a problem. When he talked about Egypt, because brothers and sisters, when I talk around, Africans from the continents think that the Egyptians that we talk about are these Arabs who are in Egypt today. Africans today in Africa, they think that the Egyptians that we are reading in history are these Arabs we see in Egypt today. And that's why in this book, when I was translating it, Diop writes, they say, the idea of a black Egypt. Guess what? When I was at City College translating this with Dr. Jeffries, the publisher had found a black person who was an expert in what is called Romance languages. If you don't know that, that's French, Spanish, Latin, what else? Portuguese. They are called Romance languages because they have a same source, right? He's an expert in that. So when I translated the introduction in the first chapter, Sister Lori here typed it, I sent it to the guy. I said, I want you to edit it and send it back to me so I know how you're doing the right work. When this African-American expert translated, edited that, where Diop says the idea of a black Egypt, he changed that to the idea of an African Egypt. Now, who has caught what the problem is there? The problem is, if you say an idea of an African Egypt, that means that that Egypt was not black. That's the reason why Diop used the word black. In French, he used the word noir. So I called him, I said, brother, how can you translate noir into African? Oh, you know, Africans don't want to be called black nowadays, you know. We got to get rid of that racism stuff of bad color. I said, no, we're not writing a new book, my brother. We're translating a book. Let the words of the man be what it. And so I came to Dr. Jeffries. I said, Dr. Jeffries, I can't work with this man. He said, he's a brother. I said, yeah, but he want to mess up the job. Why? I showed him because Dr. Jeffries knows French. So he said, okay, but I'm not the one who overseeing this work. It's Dr. Clarke. So I went to Dr. Clarke's house. I told him, look, this is what the man is saying. Dr. Clarke said, he's in a soft voice. He said, Yaa Lengi, you are the one who's translating. If it doesn't fit what the man wrote, you make the decision. I said, okay, I'm not going to work with him. So I called the publisher, who was a white man, who had published his first book, African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality, Lawrence Hill. So I called him. He said, oh, Mr. Ngemi, what are you talking about? That man is an expert on Romance languages. I say, it's not about being an expert, it's about the man's translation. Well, you know, if you don't do that, we'll find another translator. He didn't know that Dr. Ben told me when I met him that this book, they were looking for a translator for a long time. They couldn't find him. So I said, okay, find another translator. So we cut off for like 3 months. He didn't call me. The 4th month, I got a call from him. All right, I have found here another editor. I said, fine. And this editor was, by the way, white, a French expatriate. I sent him the same introduction, first chapter. He fixed it. He didn't change anything. Because that idea of a black Egypt, brothers and sisters, so when Diop says, insofar as Egypt is a distant mother of Western civilizational sciences, he's talking about what? Black Egypt, which is not being taught in Africa. In no African countries. And those of you who know about Diop, you know that he was not even allowed to teach one class in his own country. One course. From the independence of Senegal that he fought for, to the time he died, the Senegalese government forbade him to teach even one class. He could only do research on campus, go out of the country, go do your lectures, but he wouldn't even give a lecture in Senegal, in his own country. Because of this knowledge. Because they knew that if the African children learned that, why? There will be a revolution. Africa wouldn't be where it is today. That's one thing. The second thing I'm going to show you that we, Lumumba, Malcolm X, all of us, we're going to need to get to that level. Looking at African history and the world history as a missing part of world history. In that introduction, Diop writes this. Thus, imperialism, like the prehistoric hunter, first killed the being spiritually and culturally before trying to eliminate it physically. Then he says, the negation, and this, listen carefully, the negation of the history and intellectual accomplishments of black Africans was cultural, mental murder, which preceded and paved the way for our genocide here on the continent and there in the world. The negation of our knowledge, he said, was cultural and intellectual murder that preceded and paved the way for our physical genocide, both on the continent and throughout the diaspora. That's why leadership, this word Dr. McIntosh used, is so important for us to understand. That if Lumumba was killed, was because he was at that level, to try to not only give us the pride of being human beings, being people created, and in fact, by the way, being the fathers and the mothers of the human race. Because when you study this book, you're going to find out Diop is talking about that all the human races came out of us. In fact, right now, as a scientist, I was teaching children here. Well, I got fired for teaching it, but it's all right. I was teaching biology, genetics, that shows how you can go from the black couple to generating all the races on the face of the earth in one generation. Now, Diop talks from a paleontological standpoint, from the archaeological standpoint, and for also from the anthropological standpoint. But in science today, brothers and sisters, there's so much evidence to the point where when you go home, you can hit on your computer on YouTube, you can hit in the journey of man. You hit in the journey of man by a white geneticist from California, blonde-haired white geneticist. He went all the way back to Africa, to the desert of Namibia, to talk to the brothers and the sisters who are barefooted there, telling them, I come from you. So genetically, we traced the migrations of humans out of Africa, and that in these so-called temperate regions, where it was cold, that's where black people skin changed, lighted up because they had to survive the temperate, the cold regions. That's all that happened. So this white geneticist retraces that in the journey of man. Now, in biology, in genetics, I was teaching that in the Bronx. By this time, I met a white lady who was a racist, so she told me my career is going to suffer. And indeed, even though I was just teaching summer school, they fired me by sending me a letter to my house. From today, you're fired. You are removed from the payroll of the Board of Education. Since 2001, I've been fighting until today. But the knowledge is there. So that's why black leadership, Brother McIntosh has to do everything to send every black leadership a tape or send them information that we need to wake up. You heard what Diop says, right? That they first killed us what? Spiritually and culturally. That's why in my native Congo, as I'm speaking to you today, the pictures that Dr. McIntosh saw over there, about 8 to 10 million Congolese have died already in the Congo. And these Africans, nobody's saying anything about it. African people today, nobody's saying anything about it. And guess what? Who's killing the Congolese? Other Africans. Other Africans. Well, we can say, okay, maybe those Africans, as Job said, have been destroyed, what? Culturally and spiritually, right? So that's why they're killing each other, right? So what is missing? What is missing? Education. Knowledge. What is missing? Knowledge. The knowledge that Sheikh Anta Diop got, the knowledge that Patrice Lumumba got, the knowledge that Malcolm X got to say, I'll die for my people. And they did not flinch about it. When Malcolm X was shot, he was saying what? Now brothers, peace. Brothers, he's calling them brothers, right? Brothers, brothers. The same brothers shot him dead. That's why, brothers and sisters, it is so important that not only we get this knowledge, we talk about Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, and the knowledge that these people, you have a picture here, left for us, but that we internalize them and put this knowledge to work. I tell you, our young people here in America need to hear that. Our young people in Africa need to, that's why I told you that Dr. Jeffries cannot die. He has to wait until we liberate the Congo. So he can go to the Congo and start teaching. Brothers, Diop said we were killed, culturally and spiritually. So in order now for you to know yourself again, we're going to need what? What I call resurrection. Resurrection. So we're going to need to know ourselves again, right? What the ancestors used to say, know thyself. Dr. Ben will always repeat that everywhere he spoke. Know thyself. We need to know ourselves because we have been de-knowledged about ourselves. We have been deprogrammed, that they'll say today, about ourselves. The knowledge of self, we don't have it anymore. If you go to the Congo today, go to any country in Africa today, young Africans are not aspiring to be Africans. They're aspiring to be Europeans. That's why I told you there's no Pan-Africanist leader today in Africa. None, not one. Africa today is in a stage that Kwame Nkrumah called neo-colonialism. Kwame Nkrumah saw it coming, and he wrote about it. And that's why Europeans did everything to remove all those Pan-Africanists, all those leaders, gone. Now they have Africa back in their hands. I was in Atlanta with Dr. Jeffries at a War Room meeting, Worldwide African. We spoke there. Now, I had to translate for a brother, a scholar from the Ivory Coast, who came from France. Man, this brother told us about the money that France uses in those African countries that used to be French colonies. It's called CFA franc. CFA franc they use. This brother, who is an economist, teaches in Paris, explained to us, he said, look, when Germany occupied Europe and France, Germany made a currency for France, for those countries that he colonized, in this sense, that all the resources, all the currencies, all the foreign currencies of France cannot stay in France, they have to go to Germany. So Germany is the one who has to decide if France wants to buy a chair from Africa. Germany has to give them the foreign currency because all the money of France were kept in Germany. When France was liberated, France turned around and created the same type of currency for Africa. In Africa, you know we have all these resources, right? For instance, Gabon has oil. South African Republic has diamonds. We have all these currencies. Ivory Coast is the first producer of cocoa, where you get your chocolate. All these resources, when they sell them, the foreign currencies do not go back to Africa. They go to France. If any African president wants to buy a car from overseas, they have to ask Paris to please give us some currency, we want to buy a car. Now this is money from their own resources. When Gbagbo, the president of Ivory Coast, who was removed with the military force, when he became president, this is what he found out. The house, the presidential house in Ivory Coast, that the African president is staying, they are still renting it, paying rent to Paris, to France. That's what Gbagbo found. At Abidjan, there's a port there. All these ships coming in, you know, they pay a fee. That fee, 30% has to go to France, government. Right? Then 40% goes to France, 30% for the government, then 30% they say, now 30% Gbagbo, that's yours, you can put in your pocket. He said, how can I put it in my pocket? It belongs to the people. He said, that's how we've been doing it since since independence. So you got to do it. When he said he cannot do it because the sisters here in America, we African people here in America, we're going to need to go back to Africa and teach Africans. That's the motherland. That's the source. And if our people there are black, or as Diab says, are dead culturally and spiritually, then what can we hope for Africa? What can we expect from Africa? We cannot expect anything from Africa. So, having said that, the key point with the lesson that black leaders can learn today from Lumumba's leadership, Malcolm X's leadership, our ancestors here's leadership, is that first we're going to need to know